Let's go to the next question. The next question is, malignant hyperthermia is a potentially fatal genetic disorder characterized by hyperresponsiveness to inhaled anesthetic agent, and it results in elevated body temperature, skeletal muscle rigidity, and lactic acidosis. What is the following molecular change which accounts to this clinical manifestation? The options are decreased voltage sensitivity of the dihydropyridine receptors, B. Enhanced activity of sarcoplasmic reticulum calcium ATPase pump. C. Prolonged opening of the ryanodine receptor channels. And D. Reduction in the density of voltage sensitive sodium channels in T tubule membrane. So let's understand first what is malignant hyperthermia. Now, malignant hyperthermia, as the question mentions, is associated with increase in the muscle contraction, which results into increase in the body temperature. Now, this particular thing, I'll just draw the diagram first. So, this is a sarcolemma which sends in the T tubules, which conducts the action potential into the depths. Within the T tubules, we have the DHP receptors, which is dihydropyridine receptors, which are voltage gated, calcium channels, which detects the arrival of the action potential. This particular channel is in contact with the ryanodine receptor. Now, where are the ryanodine receptors located? This is the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is a storehouse of calcium in the skeletal muscle. This particular storehouse has gate in the form of ryanodine receptors. So this particular gate is ryanodine receptor present on the sarcoplasmic reticulum, which is a storehouse of calcium. Here I'll tell you one more point. There is something called as calsequestrin, which is a protein which binds with calcium, and it increases the calcium binding capacity 50 times. Now what happens is, every time the action potential traverses through the T tubules, it causes displacement of this particular receptor. The ryanodine receptors gets displaced and the DHP receptors open up, and the gates remain open, or the gates begin to open, which causes the calcium to be available in the sarcoplasm. Once the calcium is available, it will increase the basal calcium levels from -7 moles to 10 raised to -4 moles. And this increase in calcium is good enough to cause activity of troponin C. So it combines with troponin C, and this will cause the tropomyosin to uncover the active sites of actin, and they both are made available for the myosin interaction, which will result into skeletal muscle contraction. Now, in malignant hyperthermia, the problem is with ryanodine receptors. Because these receptors are defective, they remain open. And because they remain open, calcium is always available in the vicinity to combine with troponin C and result into troponin C calcium tropomyosin interaction. Tropomyosin moves away from the active sites of actin, and thus the actin and myosin interaction keeps on happening, resulting into the muscle contraction, which increases the body temperature. So if you see the options, the third option is prolonged opening of the ryanodine receptor channel, which is the most fitted molecular change, which results into the clinical manifestation. So that is about the malignant hyperthermia. The next question is, calculation based. A 60-year-old woman has a resting heart rate of 70 beats per minute. The arterial pressure is 130 by 85 millimeters of mercury and the body temperature is normal. Her pressure volume diagram of the left ventricle is given below. And what is her cardiac output in ml per minute? The options are 3000, 4000, 6000 and 7000. So let's understand this particular graph. This is a pressure volume curve of the left ventricle where the point depicted over here is the end systolic volume. That is, point A is the end systolic volume. Point B is the end diastolic volume. So end diastolic volume minus end systolic volume will give the stroke volume. So as per the formula, it is 150 minus 50, which is 100 ml. Cardiac output is given by the formula stroke volume into heart rate. So 100 multiplied by heart rate is 70, and the correct option is 7000 ml per minute. The option given over here contains 7000, so the correct answer is this. Now, before going to the next question, let's discuss a little bit about this graph. Horizontally, it depicts the stroke volume. So this is a stroke volume which we have calculated. If you see vertically, this graph is talking about the afterload. So if I have to draw the same diagram, this is volume in the left ventricle. This is a pressure. So this is a curve which has 4 phases. Phase 1, which is a phase of filling, which goes from end systolic volume to end diastolic volume. So this entire thing is the stroke volume. Then we have phase 2, which is a phase of isovolumetric contraction, where at the end of end diastolic volume, the heart is contracting as a closed chamber in order to increase the pressure within the ventricle, which will overcome the pressure of the aorta. So there is an increase in the pressure over and above, which is depicted in this diagram. Phase 3 is a ejection phase where the stroke volume is ejected out from the ventricle into the aorta, and there is an increase in the pressure from 100 to approximately 120 millimeters of mercury. And phase 4 is coming back to the end systolic volume, that is isovolumetric relaxation phase, where the pressure in the ventricles reduce and the volume remains steady at end systolic volume. Vertically, if you see, the graph depicts the afterload or the blood pressure against which the ventricle is pumping the blood in the aorta. So as per the formula and the various parts of the curve of the pressure volume of the left ventricle, we can calculate the cardiac output in the following question. Now let's go to the next question. The diagram shown the change in the membrane potential during the action potential in the giant squid performed by a physiologist in a research lab. what is the following primary responsible for the change in the membrane potential between point B and point D? The options are inhibition of sodium potassium ATPase pump, movement of potassium into the cell, movement of potassium out of the cell, movement of sodium into the cell, and movement of sodium out of the cell. So now let's quickly go through the various phases of the action potential in the axon or a nerve fiber. So if I have to draw, this is a resting membrane potential which is minus 70 millivolts for a large myelinated nerve fiber. This is characterized by the various phases. So from resting membrane potential, it goes to threshold potential of minus 55 millivolts. So there's a threshold potential. Once the membrane reaches a threshold potential, there's a sudden upstroke, up movement, which is called as depolarization, which brings the membrane up to 0 and overshoot till plus 35 millivolts, and this phase is spike potential. Once the membrane reaches plus 35, there is a downward movement of the membrane potential, which is repolarization. Once the membrane touches the membrane potential, here it is called as after depolarization. The membrane becomes more negative, which is hyperpolarization. And then the membrane again comes back to the resting membrane state, which is called as after hyperpolarization. Now let's understand the ionic basis of these phases, and that will give the answer. So now from resting membrane potential to the threshold potential, there is sudden opening of voltage gated sodium channels, which will cause sodium influx. Now why sodium influx? Because if you see outside the cell, sodium is high and inside the cell sodium is low. So every time this channel opens, it will cause movement of sodium from high concentration to low concentration. So it is the inward movement of sodium which causes the membrane to go from minus 70 to minus 55. Once it reaches minus 55, it initiates what is called as a Hodgkin's cycle, which is a Hodgkin's positive feedback cycle, where opening of few sodium channels leads to opening of large number of sodium channels and a sudden upward movement, which totally is called as depolarization phase of an action potential. So from threshold, then you go into a phase of depolarization and overshoot. All these things are because of the sodium influx. Once it reaches the overshoot, there is another event which happens, that is potassium channels, which are also voltage gated, open up, and because they are slow to open, they open at the peak of plus 35 millivolts, and it causes potassium efflux. That means the potassium is moving out of the cell. Why potassium should move out of the cell? Because inside the cell the potassium concentration is high. So as soon as the voltage gated channels open, potassium will move from high concentration to low concentration, that is intracellular compartment to the extracellular compartment. Now since potassium is a positively charged ion, it will move the positive ions outside the cell, and in the whole process the membrane will again become negative. So this phase is called as repolarization phase, which is because of the potassium efflux or potassium movement out of the cell. Then we have gone into the phase of after depolarization. which is because of the potassium getting accumulated outside the cell, reducing the gradient for the movement of potassium out, and hence there is a very slow downward movement of the potassium. And if you see, this membrane goes into hyperpolarization. So what is the reason for hyperpolarization? Hyperpolarization is mainly because potassium channels are slow to close. So the potassium channels remain open, the efflux continues, and the membrane becomes more and more negative. Then the membrane again comes back to the resting membrane potential, where it is called as after hyperpolarization, which is because of the activity of sodium potassium ATPase pump, which will reassure the homeostasis to come back to normal. That means the amount of sodium which has moved in during the action potential is again thrown out of the cell by virtue of sodium potassium ATPase pump, and the potassium is brought back into the cell, which brings back the ionic equilibrium and brings the resting membrane potential back to normal. So now the question is between point B to point D. This phase I have told you is because of the depolarization, because of the sodium influx. So the correct option over here is movement of sodium into the cell. Let's discuss the next question. The next question that is written over here is, a 75-year-old patient comes with mask face, wide-based gait and a pen rolling tremor. What could be the site of lesion? The options are cerebellum, basal ganglia, primary motor cortex and hypothalamus. Now, the features that are told over here, that is a mask face, wide-based gait and a pen rolling tremor, it is classically seen in Parkinson's disease, which is a triad of rigidity, akinesia, and tremors. The tremors which are seen in Parkinson's is pen rolling tremor, or they are also called as resting tremor. So Parkinson's is a disease which is associated with degeneration of nigrostrial pathway of basal ganglia, where there is a reduction in dopamine secretion, and hence the features of mask face, wide-based gait and pen rolling tremor. So the correct option over here is basal ganglia. Cerebellum also shows tremors, but the difference is cerebellar tremors are called as intentional tremors. That means in the cerebellar diseases, as the patient approaches the end of that particular movement, because of dysmetria, the person either overshoots or undershoots and fails to reach the object. This results into intentional tremor towards the end of the movement. So tremors are not present at rest and they are present towards the end of the movement, which is classically seen in cerebellar disorders. Primary motor cortex is mainly associated with the loss of the voluntary movements. So here in the question, the voluntary movements are not described, but it is a pen rolling tremor, which is classical for the basal ganglia lesion. And hypothalamus will affect a lot of neuroendocrine, pituitary related, temperature related, circadian rhythm related activities. So the correct option is the pen rolling tremor, is basal ganglia. Coming to the next question, what clinical condition is depicted in this particular diagram? Now, if you see, this is a total body water, which is roughly 42 liters. That is 60% of the body weight. Out of this, 28 liters is the intracellular fluid, which accounts to almost 40% of the body weight, and 14 liters is the extracellular fluid, which is approximately remaining 20%. This is the osmolarity and this is a volume. The pink colored graph is the normal graph, and in the blue colored graph there is an abnormality. So the first point that you have to note is there is a reduction in the volume. So the first thing is there is reduction in the volume and there's increase in the osmolarity. Now, this particular graph is showing the volume contraction or dehydration with increased hyperosmolarity. So if we will consider each of the option, let's understand the first option, that is diabetes insipidus. What happens in diabetes insipidus? Now, diabetes insipidus could be central or neurogenic or peripheral, that is nephrogenic. The problem in diabetes insipidus is there's a reduction in ADH production. Now, in central or neurogenic diabetes insipidus, there is a problem at anterior hypothalamus, and hence there's a decrease in the ADH production. Now, ADH normally causes water reabsorption. Now, if ADH is not there, water reabsorption will not occur and the volume will be lost by increase in the urine output. So it basically causes dehydration or volume contraction. Secondly, in ADH deficiency, the volume contraction is for the extracellular fluid and the solutes are retained. So the extracellular fluid will have hyperosmolarity and there will be a volume contraction. Now, the osmolarity increase will cause intracellular volume to reduce and the extracellular volume is also reducing. So this particular graph is mainly depicting the condition of diabetes insipidus. We will also discuss what is basically happening in Addison's disease. Addison's disease is decrease in the aldosterone secretion by zona glomerulosa of adrenal cortex. Here there is decrease in the sodium absorption. So there is decrease in the ECF osmolarity. Sodium absorption is decreased, so obviously it will cause water loss. So decrease in the ECF osmolarity with decrease in the volume, and this is seen in Addison's. However, in Addison's there is decrease in the ECF osmolarity. Here there is increase in the ECF osmolarity, so Addison's cannot be the correct answer. In syndrome of inappropriate ADH secretion, there is volume expansion, and because there is volume expansion, there is hypoosmolarity. So both the conditions are not seen over here. And in the last option, there is hypertonic saline. Now in hypertonic saline, there will be increase in the volume and increase in the osmolarity. In the graph, there is a decrease in the volume. So the correct option, which is most relatable to this particular abnormality, is diabetes insipidus. Let's discuss the last question. The player is injured with playing and the physiotherapist applies massage to the area, which results in instant reduction in the pain sensation. What is a mechanism? So basically what is happening we will understand in this particular condition. So injury, which is sensed by the nociceptors, which will send impulses via A delta C fibers into the laminas of the spinal cord, lamina 1, 5, lamina 1 and 2. And from here you have a second order neuron which will send impulses to the thalamus. So basically this is a pathway for the pain. This is a first order neuron which will carry the sensation. Now when massage is applied to the same area, the receptors of this touch sensation, which are Merkel's, Meissner's and Passinian, they will send impulses via A beta fibers to the spinal cord. Now, in addition, they also send impulses to the inhibitory interneuron, which will have inhibitory action on A delta or C fibers which are carrying the pain pathway. So what they are doing is they are causing presynaptic inhibition of the pain fibers, which will decrease the secretion of neurotransmitter at the laminae and hence decrease the firing of the second order neuron. This particular theory is called as gate control theory or gate control mechanism. This is a reason for reduction in the pain sensation as the massage is applied to the injured part. So the options given are lateral inhibition. In lateral inhibition, there is a direct inhibition of the surrounding neurons. In gate control, this is what is happening as I've shown in the diagram. Now, Renshaw cell inhibition is a kind of inhibition in which there is a Renshaw cell inhibitor which will send impulses to the efferent neuron to reduce the activity. So there is a specialized neuron which is called as a Renshaw cell which is acting as a inhibitor. And last option is a direct postsynaptic inhibition. This postsynaptic inhibition is direct. Now here in this particular diagram, I have showed you that it is a presynaptic inhibition. So the correct answer for this particular question is the gate control mechanism. So with this, we have discussed few of the clinical based questions and all the best for your examinations. Thank you so much.